Cemeteries are supposed to be quiet, peaceful. But some nights, they feel alive, like they're watching you. I never believed it until that night with my friends. We thought it would be just a little thrill, sitting among the graves, telling stories. The night I realized something in the darkness wasn't just shadows. I couldn't look away. And even now I still wonder, what exactly was out there, waiting in the fog? Tonight, we're diving into true graveyard horror stories that actually happened. So stick close and keep watching till the end to find out what happened, before it was too late. But before we start, make sure to subscribe or follow so you never miss any new chilling releases. If you're enjoying the content, hit like, drop a comment, and share this video. Let's see how many of you truly love this kind of episodes. Now here's your challenge. One of the stories you're about to hear might not be real. It could be completely made up. Or maybe all of them are true. Watch till the end. Try to spot the fake, and leave your guess in the comments. And as for last episode's fake story, they were all true. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. And now, let's dive into the darkness together. I've never been the type to scare easily. I grew up reading Stephen King, watching every horror movie I could find, and joking that nothing in the real world could ever frighten me. That all changed one night a few months ago. It started as a bet with a coworker. We were arguing over whether anyone could actually feel genuine fear in a graveyard at night. I claimed I could handle it. He dared me to prove it. The cemetery was on the outskirts of town, an old, neglected plot surrounded by forest. Most locals avoided it even during the day. Overgrown weeds choked the pathways, and the gravestones leaned at impossible angles. Many were broken, names and dates worn away. When I first saw it in daylight, it looked spooky enough, but I convinced myself I could handle it. Night, though, night was different. I arrived just as the sun disappeared behind the horizon, leaving a dull, fading blue light in the sky, the kind of light photographers call blue hour. The mist had started to curl along the uneven ground, thickening between the tombstones. My flashlight barely cut through it, and the air smelled of damp earth and decaying leaves. I laughed at my own nervousness. "It's just a graveyard," I muttered to myself. "Nothing here but stones and dirt." I walked slowly down a narrow dirt path between the graves, my boots crunching on gravel and mud. Some of the older stones were cracked and leaning, engraved with dates from the 1800s. I made a mental note not to touch anything, careful not to trip on exposed roots or sink into soft patches of earth. The fog was already making shapes out of ordinary objects. Branches looked like reaching hands, shadows moved as if alive. But I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. After about 10 minutes, I slipped on a patch of wet moss and landed hard against a tombstone. Pain shot through my shoulder, but it was the sudden, inexplicable chill that made me freeze. I wasn't alone. I could feel it before I even saw it. A presence. At first, I thought it was just another shadow, another trick of the fog. But then I saw it. A figure barely visible through the mist, crouched behind a leaning gravestone a few yards away. I couldn't make out a face, just the dark outline of a person, hunched and still. My pulse raced. My first thought was a hiker, or someone else exploring. But it didn't move like a normal person. It didn't walk. It watched. I pressed my back against the tombstone, trying to calm myself, telling myself to breathe slowly. My flashlight slipped from my hand and clattered against the stone. The sound echoed unnaturally in the silence, and I swear I saw the figure shift slightly, as if acknowledging the noise. My stomach twisted, and I suddenly wished I had brought someone with me. Instinct finally won over curiosity. I scrambled to my feet and tried to backtrack along the path, slipping in mud and brushing against thorny undergrowth. Every snap of a branch or rustle of leaves made me jump. I glanced back, and the figure was gone. Or maybe it had been standing there all along, blending perfectly with the shadows. Either way, it didn't feel like an accident. I ran blindly between gravestones, desperate to reach the gate. My flashlight beam danced over names long forgotten, faces carved in stone staring back at me. Roots caught my feet, mud coated my hands. I could hear my own breathing, loud and ragged, over the soft swish of fog rolling across the ground. Finally, I reached the gate, only to see the shape emerge at the edge of the cemetery. I froze. It was human-shaped, yes, but there was something unnerving about the posture. Hunched, deliberate, and silent. It didn't move toward me, but I could feel its attention. I didn't wait. I ran out the gate, down the dirt road, and didn't stop until I reached a street lamp near the main road. My legs ached, my clothes were torn, and my chest burned from the sprint. Even then, I didn't stop. I called a friend to pick me up and waited under the streetlight, flashlight in hand, scanning the tree line behind the cemetery. Nothing moved, but the memory of that figure, crouched and silent in the fog, stayed with me. I never reported it. There was nothing to report. No footprints, no discarded items, no way to describe exactly what I saw. But I know what I felt. Fear unlike anything I had ever experienced. Not a jump scare kind of fear, but the paralyzing, gut-deep terror of being watched, stalked, and powerless. I went back once in daylight, trying to rationalize it. There was nothing unusual, just old stones, overgrown weeds, and fallen branches. Yet every time I pass that cemetery now, I feel the same tightening in my chest. Shadows seem darker there, and fog, even in the morning, seems to cling to the graves in a way that makes me pause. It taught me something simple. Real fear isn't about monsters or ghosts. It's about vulnerability. About being alone somewhere you know you shouldn't be, knowing someone or something is watching. And the worst part? I'll never know what that figure was, and I don't think I want to. Even now, when I picture that cemetery, I see the fog curling around broken tombstones, the twisted skeletal trees, and the dark figure crouched silently, waiting. I can feel its eyes on me, and it terrifies me more than anything a horror movie could ever show. Back in high school, my friends and I had this habit that, looking back, probably sounds insane. We liked to hang out near graveyards at night. Not in some we're edgy and rebelling kind of way. More like we were drawn to the darkness, to the thrill of being somewhere that felt forbidden. Most people avoid graveyards once the sun goes down, but we were the opposite. We'd perch on cold, uneven tombstones, trading ghost stories and trying to scare each other. It wasn't just fun. It was a challenge, a way to prove we could handle fear. There was one night that still haunts me. We had found a small crumbling stone wall covered in slick moss, just off the main path, and that's where we settled. The fog rolled low along the ground, curling around the headstones, and the air was heavy with the scent of damp earth. My friends and I laughed nervously, the kind of forced laughter that masks unease. Each story we told seemed to feed the tension instead of dissipating it. But that night, the usual thrill was different. Something about the air felt wrong, like the graveyard itself was watching us. I was halfway through a story about a haunted inn in a nearby town, my voice shaking slightly even though I tried to sound confident. Every so often, my eyes flicked to the far corner of the cemetery, where the oldest graves leaned at strange angles and shadows pooled thick and black. At first, I thought it was the moonlight, or maybe a tree branch swaying in the wind. But then I saw it. A figure. It rose slowly from the ground, not sitting up, not crouching, but pushing itself upright from the dirt, like it had been lying there for a long, long time. It was tall and hunched, and the way it moved was wrong. Every instinct in me screamed danger. It didn't move like a human normally would. It was slow, deliberate, dragging its weight forward in a way that suggested the ground itself resisted it. I felt my stomach drop and my chest tighten. My mind scrambled to rationalize it. Maybe it was someone camping out. Maybe someone was playing a prank. But my gut said otherwise. I looked at my friends, whispering, "Do you see that?" Every one of them nodded, faces pale, eyes wide. They'd seen it too. The sound of our own rapid breathing and the distant rustle of leaves filled the silence. The figure started moving toward the rear gate of the cemetery, steps long and measured. a stalking motion that sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't walking. It was hunting. Fear slammed into us. Without hesitation, we bolted. Our feet pounded against the wet soil, echoing unnaturally among the graves. The cold air cut through our lungs, our hearts thudding like drum beats, threatening to burst. I could feel panic crawling up my spine. Behind me, I thought I heard it move, a sound too deliberate to be coincidence. We didn't look back. Not even once. When we finally cleared the graveyard and turned a corner onto a well-lit street, we slowed, gasping, hearts racing. But one of my friends, the one closest to the figure, wasn't okay. He was sweating heavily, his face pale, breaths shallow and rapid. Over the next few days, he developed a fever that lasted 3 days straight. None of us knew whether it was shock, stress, or something more, but it left a mark on all of us. Weeks later, we learned the truth. The figure wasn't a ghost or some supernatural thing. It was a man, a real man. He had been living near that cemetery for years, sleeping next to the grave of his deceased wife every single night. The grave we saw him rise from was hers. He hadn't been dead or undead. He was alive, consumed entirely by grief, so much so that he spent every night in the cold and damp of the cemetery. His hunched movement, the slow rhythm, it wasn't unnatural. It was the weight of sorrow and loneliness. Knowing this hit me like a punch. Fear mixed with sorrow, confusion, and even a strange sort of empathy. The man wasn't a monster. He was broken. He had lost everything that mattered to him and had transformed the cemetery into his home, living in a private, tragic kind of purgatory. The figure we had seen didn't feel right, even knowing the truth. It wasn't supposed to exist like that, human, yet so distorted by grief that it almost became something else entirely. Even now, thinking back to that night gives me chills. Every shadow, every flicker of movement brings it back. The man's hunched form, the dragging, deliberate steps, the way the cemetery seemed to bend around him. It's a memory that defies logic. He doesn't haunt me with a spectral presence. He haunts me with the raw, uncomfortable truth of mortality, grief, and obsession. That night, I learned that some horror isn't about ghosts or monsters. It's about human beings and the darkness that can consume them. Even today, I can't decide whether I'm more terrified by what I saw or by what I later learned. It's a mix of fear, pity, and a haunting melancholy. Some nights, I think about that graveyard, that figure, and the sound of the fog rolling across the tombstones, and I realize that real horror isn't in the supernatural. It's in watching a human being unravel in the shadows and knowing you've glimpsed the edge of what grief can do. Several months ago, the girl I was seeing suggested something for our third date that sounded equal parts ridiculous and terrifying. "Let's take a bottle of wine, a laptop, and a scary movie to the most remote graveyard we can find," she said. Both of us were hardcore horror fans. We'd watched countless films, read every ghost story we could find, and honestly, we felt untouchable, jaded, immune to fear. This was supposed to be an adventure, a way to test ourselves. We found a century-old graveyard through public records, a place neither of us had ever visited. She drove us deep into the backcountry, an hour away from town, along a forested road so narrow it seemed swallowed by darkness. Eventually, we had to park 3 miles out, hidden behind dense undergrowth, because there was nowhere else to turn off. We set off on foot, carefully making our way down a dirt path toward the unmarked cemetery, trying not to brush against the prickly undergrowth on either side. After what felt like forever, the trees opened up into a small, shadowed clearing. The gravestones were scattered randomly, leaning and cracked with age. It was perfect, eerily quiet, and impossibly dark. We laid down a blanket, set up the laptop, poured our wine, turned off the flashlights, and started the movie. The atmosphere was thick with tension, almost tangible. I felt a thrill, a mix of excitement and nervousness, but I still felt relatively safe, until the unexpected happened. Less than 10 minutes in, Headlights pierced through the trees on the road outside the graveyard. A pickup truck passed slowly, and for a moment we shrugged, thinking nothing of it. Maybe a local driving home late. But then it came back, unmistakably the same truck, its headlights cutting through the darkness as it turned slowly into the gated entrance of the cemetery. I froze, and so did she. The light hit us briefly, and the truck stopped outside the gate, idling. We didn't know if the driver had seen us or what his intentions were. Panic surged through me. I suggested packing up, and she nodded silently. As we gathered our things, the truck went dark. Silence pressed down on us like a weight. We crouched low in the undergrowth, our hearts hammering. It was impossible to know whether the driver had fallen asleep, or if there were two people in the cab distracted by something else. But either way, we couldn't risk walking directly past the truck. I grasped her hand, silently motioning for her to follow me as we inched forward, step by painstaking step. Every sound, the snap of a twig, a rustle in the leaves, made my stomach twist. I strained my eyes toward the truck, but could discern nothing inside. When we finally slipped out of the truck's line of sight, we picked up our pace, though the fear lingered like ice in my veins. My mind refused to settle on a rational explanation. There was no way to be certain we weren't being watched, or worse, hunted. We were about half a mile from our car when a scream pierced the night. A woman's voice, sharp and terrified, followed instantly by a gunshot. My stomach dropped. We froze, then ran blindly, adrenaline driving us forward through the dark, uneven path. At one point, I stopped, realizing it might be smarter to hide. If the truck came up behind us, it would catch us before we reached the car. We dove into the undergrowth, flattened ourselves, and pressed our faces into the cold, damp earth. I felt her shaking beside me, and I tried to calm her, stroking her hair gently as we listened to the forest around us. Moments later, headlights cut through the darkness again. The truck rolled past, creeping slowly, stopping, idling. Time stretched unbearably as it seemed to pause over every small noise, every shadow. After what felt like an eternity, it drove off, and we waited, terrified to move, until dawn's first light barely softened the forest. We emerged cautiously, finding a drier patch to sit on and gather our wits. That's when I noticed something. A flashlight missing, likely dropped earlier, perhaps reflecting the truck's lights. We lay low again, covering ourselves with a blanket and leaves, waiting. Hours passed in silence, our hearts still hammering, until we finally heard the normal sounds of cars on the road. When it was safe, we crept to our car. She stayed hidden as I approached first, scanning for anyone waiting. Thankfully, it was empty. We drove back to town, mud-smeared, exhausted, and went straight to the police station. Officers searched the graveyard but found no evidence, no body, no blood, no clues. I've never known who that driver was or what he wanted. And the memory of his slow, deliberate movements, the way the truck idled and waited, and the chilling scream that followed. Those images are etched in my mind. Since that night, every horror movie we watch has stayed in the safety of our home, and I can't imagine taking another step into a graveyard after dark. If you've made it to the end of this video, let me know in the comments which story creeped you out the most, and if you could survive only one of them, which one would it be? Don't forget to drop your guess. Which story do you think was the fake one? Also, if you enjoyed the episode, hit super thanks if you're on YouTube, or send us some stars if you're on Facebook to show some love and make your comments stand out. Want to go next level? Get early access to upcoming episodes, exclusive members-only content, and much more by joining our YouTube membership or becoming a Patreon supporter. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's waiting there for you. Don't forget to like, share, and catch up on our previous episodes. And now, stay tuned for the next horror episode.